What was your most embarrassing moment in front of a doctor? I was 14. My mom was in the room. Doctor, you're eating okay? Me, yes sir. Doctor, do you smoke? Me, no way. Doctor, do you drink? Me, yeah, every day. Awkward 5-6 silence pause. Doctor continues to ask questions, fill out forms. 2 minutes later. Me. Ooh, you mean drink alcohol? Haha. No, never. I thought you meant milk or something. I remember them laughing and my face getting all red. Went about an anal problem. The doctor put his finger up to check all was okay. I made a slight noise and he asked if I was okay. And this is when I said that's nice, instead of that's okay. I went for a physical when I was 14. At that point I'd had my first period, but it wasn't very regular yet. At school that day just happened to start, and it started with a vengeance. All I had with me was panty liners and that wasn't going to cut it. So I ended up going into the bathroom and stuffing my underwear with toilet paper, like you do. Of course when I get to the doctor she said, since you're a teenager and you're going through a lot of changes, I like to do a check of your genitals just to make sure everything looks okay. Nothing internal, just external. So I pulled my underwear down and a ton of bloody bunched up toilet paper fell out. I tried to pick it up before she noticed, but she definitely did. She was cool about it though. Before she left the room she gave me a goodie bag. Just a little bag with a sample of acne cream, candy, and random little toys she gave kids before they left, and slipped a pad into the bag as well. What a pal. Was at a urologist in a hospital and there were a couple of power cuts. Lights dipped out, generators kicked in. As he's finishing the examination, mid-sentence, the lights go out again. He gets up and walks out to check on things. 15 minutes later I'm still sat on the bed with my old chap out and pants around my ankles. A nurse walks past the open door and does one of those comedy double takes. Do you have an appointment? Turns out the doc had actually finished the examination and returned to the ward some 15 minutes ago. To the nurse I was just some guy who had walked in and pulled his pants down and left the door open. I've had a doctor leave the room and not mention the exam was over. I don't know how long I waited, but the nurse who found me said they called for me at the front desk and thought I'd just left. Probably when I had an ultrasound on my scrotum. I had the lump checked out. He made an awkward comment about testicles looking like aviator glasses on the screen and mine were perfect shape. Didn't have cancer though, which was nice. I had a sore on my dong. The doctor took out a magnifying glass and inspected it, then acted like he couldn't see anything. He made a little smirk and a giggle. I did not realize till later he was making a joke about my dong size. Okay, you got me, doc. During a yearly checkup the doc was concerned about my weight. I promised him I'd do better and next year I would be back down to a healthy weight. Maybe a week or so later my doc saw me at a local pub with a plate of hot wings in front of me and a pint of beer. He was a bro and didn't say anything, but I could see the look of disappointment in his eyes. Farted on my doctor's hand just as she finished a prostate exam. Because of the lube it was an especially wet and raspberry sounding one. She giggled and said she'd be rich if she had a pound for every time it happened. When I was a little kid, the doctor made me lie on my tummy on his examining table so he could take my temperature rectally. A new experience for me. I didn't understand what he was doing as he inserted the thermometer, but he left me there in the room with mom, saying he'd be back shortly to take the reading. Somehow, I must have hated having it penetrate my rectum because, as mom described it, I managed to poop it out, causing the glass thermometer to smash on the floor. The doctor heard it break and came running back, telling mom that he had never before had a kid eject a thermometer through rectal motility. Not really embarrassing BC, my doctor is amazing. But anyway, I went to the doctor when I was around 16. I'd started developing allergies for the first time and wanted to get it checked out. She checks my nose and throat. Yup, that's allergies. Then she checks my right ear and literally goes, "What the heck is that?" And I'm like, "Oh, sorry, yeah, I get a lot of earwax." And she goes, "Number, it's shiny." Backtrack to 4 days before that. I was a rebellious teen and wanted to stretch my ears without my mom knowing. So, being the smart kid I was, I hot glued some pearls to the plugs so they looked like earrings. One morning I woke up and one was missing and I couldn't find it. I had to tell her my earring broke and I'd been looking for that pearl for days. She laughed. I laughed. She tried to get it out and couldn't. Had to call an endo doctor instead. I ended up getting it out at home later. I went to the doctor to treat my sore throat and I agreed to get a shot of penicillin. If you don't know, this shot goes right into the butt. As he put the needle into my rear end, I suddenly had the need to vomit. I wasn't feeling anything until the exact moment of contact with my cheek. I yell stop and immediately try to run over to the sink, where I proceed to trip and fall. Then I just start letting it all out over the floor. I was just laying there on my side blowing chunks with the needle still stuck in my butt. It wasn't one of my finer experiences at the doctor. Was at a dermatologist at age 18 before heading off to college. I had a few red spots on my chest and she wanted to check down below to ensure there was no internal bleeding. While my pants were down and she was checking, the nurse walked in without knocking and had a nice view along with half the waiting room. The nurse backed out quickly and I received a profuse apology. The doctor had to go prepare a treatment and I got to hear her tear the nurse a new one in the next room. I was suffering a terrible case of gastroenteritis. I had thrown up a few times and was still queasy, and yet I had to drive 15 minutes to my doctor's office. It was an exercise in clenching and willpower, an exercise I almost won. About 2 minutes from the doctor's office, I was hit by uncontrollable heaving. While cruising down a main road, I began vomiting out the window and quickly pulled onto a side street. As the internal pressure in my colon and my levels of fear and shame simultaneously reached a terrifying peak, I clutched at my door handle and fell out of my car into the street. Wave after wave of puking and diarrhea hit me, with no remorse and no slowdown. In the space of 2-3 minutes I was coated from head to toe with the entire former contents of my digestive tract. Vomit and vomit splashed back on my torso and arms, and liquefied feces all over from my butt to my feet. I was a subhuman beast, on all fours covered in my wrongness, and I still had to get to the doctor's office. Fortunately, I had some thick plastic bags in the backseat of my car, and I was able to cover my seats in order to avoid destroying them. I made it to the doctor without further incident. I will never forget the looks of disgust and the searing shame that burned into me in the waiting room. People beheld me like a horse patty come to life, which at that point I basically was. Brown and orange with burning red cheeks. I gave my name to the instantly pale receptionist and said I'm very sick. She had me wait for my appointment in the restroom. I spent the next 10 minutes in their tiny restroom with only my recently deported intestinal immigrants for company. It was gross and embarrassing, but at least I didn't have to see more people. I eventually saw my doctor, who greeted me warmly saying it looks like you have had quite a day. After some diagnosing and discussion, he determined that I had gastroenteritis and gave me medicine, etc. The man had delivered me into this world and handled my transformation into a poop-puke golem quite well. In the following years I've had plenty of embarrassing medical visits, but none will top the time I went to the doc after vomiting and crapping all over myself. I had a tick latch itself into my don. A female doctor had to remove it in front of my wife, who came along for moral support and couldn't stop laughing. How did you acquire a dong tick? Probably all the shoots I took while giving birth to my second kid. I felt a push coming on and relief, and I asked, "That was poop, wasn't it?" My husband said, "It sure wasn't a baby." Doctor nodded, left and never came back. So much poop. Getting a physical around 11-13 and the doctor, who was probably around 75 at the time, asks me to strip down to my boxers for the whole awkward bull grab thing. Obviously at that age and dealing with all that crap you feel weird, so when the doctor only said cough I mustered up a big one and was prepared to fire when he suddenly interrupts me with these words of wisdom: "Son, when a man has your balls in his hand you don't cough in his face." I was getting an STD test when the doctor pushed the Q-tip down my dong hole. I did the weirdest freaking jig. My right leg just completely spazzed out. When the doctor pulled it out I could see her trying to hold back the laughter, which in turn made me laugh, which in turn made her laugh. Tears of laughter ensue on both sides. When the nurse came back and she asked us what was wrong, which made us laugh again. I guess it's really not that embarrassing, but the doctor did see my wiener, so there's that. I'm a very anxious person and went to see my doctor about said anxiety, and whilst sitting there listening to him talk about medication I was of course beginning to feel increasingly more anxious. An immediate symptom of anxiety is sweaty hands. and so I'm sitting there with my hands becoming clammy and I'm holding them together on my knees, and when it comes to my turn to talk I anxiously squeezed my clam hands together and made a very authentic sounding fart noise. I didn't really know what to do, so I sort of made a oh expression and said sorry, and he said it was fine, but it was on my mind the rest of the day. I still think about it. Like, when has anyone ever had to apologize to their doctor for making a fart sound with their hands that they were afraid for being mistaken as a real fart? Why would I apologize? How weird is that? This is hilarious and demonstrates how anxiety is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Not a doctor, but I was taking my cat to the vet and this conversation happened. I'm a new cat owner. Vet, okay, so drinking at home? Me, I mean socially, but not very much. Vet, no, I meant the cat. Is he drinking water okay? I was so embarrassed. Oh god, you just reminded me of one of my end visits, where the doctor asked if I could handle the vacuum. I was like, well, my apartment's a little messy, but yeah, turns out he was asking if I could handle having my ear suctioned out. I had to get a shot. The doctor left and a super cute nurse walks in and asks if I'm ready. She's filling out papers as I undo my belt and turn around. As I'm getting a hip out, she turns back to face me and says, "Oh, your arm will be fine." So I pull my pants back up and lift my sleeve. To try and recoup I say, usually I charge for that, but I'll let it pass because it was my mistake. I was 13 getting my testicles examined by a lady doctor who was in a wheelchair. As she was examining I grew a stiffy and she told me not to be embarrassed and that it happens all the time. Then I came on her hand, which caught her a little off guard. Not a doctor but an optician. I went for my annual eye test and to get a prescription for the next year's supply of contact lenses. I usually meet the same optician and he gave me a warm welcome to the big machine that tests your eyes. He started the test and was very surprised to read the results. In great excitement, he came up to me and said, "Mom, we have only come across this in theory and I never knew this is really possible. Your power has corrected completely. You don't need contact lenses or glasses anymore." I actually believed him for a moment before sheepishly replying, "Are you sure you negated the effect of the contact lenses I am wearing?" Turns out I was supposed to take them off at least 30 minutes before testing my eyes. Oops, the man was at loss for words. Not sure if he was more embarrassed or I was. I was in the hospital a couple months ago for chest pains and was subjected to many scans and tests because I have a heart condition. I had to be given special medication to lower my heart rate for a CAT scan, but the doctor was cute and every time he walked back into the room, my heart rate would spike. Eventually they had to kick him out. What else can you do but laugh at that point? Not me, but my mom's friend went to the doctor all concerned when she was 17. This was back in the day, because she had recently started touching herself and discovered a lump near her genitalia. The female gyno congratulated the 17-year-old scared virgin on finding her clitoris. Strep nipple. I had a one-night stand with a dude who bit my tit hard enough to draw blood. No big deal at the time, but 3-4 days later my left boob is swollen and painful. Head to the nearest medicine center and I get the 70-plus-year-old male doctor, who I was hoping to avoid. I tried to not have to show him, and just tell him I have an infection and need antibiotics, but of course he needs to see what's going on. And it's not like I can lie about what happened, because there are blatant teeth marks. You could feel the air change in that room when he noticed. Doctors a swab of the area, gives me antibiotics, and as I'm leaving tells me to make some better life choices. I didn't bite myself, bro, but okay thanks. I found out after that it was a strep infection on my boob. Gag. One embarrassing moment was during a normal checkup. The doctor was doing the back tapping routine for any soreness because of a history of kidney stones. Progressing towards my sides, he entered the tickle zone, and with as much resistance as possible I tried not to laugh. But I broke and laughed this hideous screech unlike any sound out of my body before, followed by an unpleasant passing of methane. I farted. The rest of the examination was very quiet. I was embarrassed for the doctor. Many years ago I had a suction lipectomy done on my neck to remove excess fat. When I went back for a post-surgical follow-up, the doctor asked me to remove my blouse and bra. Never having been shy or modest around medical professionals, I figured he must have needed to see my neck in relation to the rest of my chest. so I happily disrobed and was standing there with my stuff hanging out when he realized I was not another patient who had had a boob job. He calmly asked me to put my clothes back on and apologized for mistaking me for the other patient, but he was blushing like crazy. I just got a chuckle out of it. Having a cut on my bollocks after deciding to make them a bit fancy for a checkup. Didn't want to go out but took off a few of the crazy long ones with a razor. Accidental nick. Bled like a mofo but forgot all about it by time the appointment came around. Then she asked me about the scab on my sack. I suddenly flushed and found myself looking down at this unfathomably hot doctor holding my plums in her gloved hand. Before I knew what was happening I was reeling off a story about catching it on a fishhook whilst organizing my tackle in the nude. It sounded ridiculous. She knew it. I knew it. I cringe every time I think of it. First time having a whole body scan. The nurse told me to go to a small room and undress. I did. And as soon as she looks at me she's all like, what the heck? Apparently you are not meant to take all your clothes off. I was just getting my flu shot and the nurse asked which arm I wanted it in. I was wearing a sweater and I wasn't going to be able to roll it up to my shoulder, so I started taking it off to give the nurse access to my arm. She looked surprised and rushed to close the door. I had a shirt on underneath but apparently she thought I was just stripping my clothes off, so I felt really awkward the rest of the visit. When I was 13, the doctor saw that I had strep throat. You know that little stick they basically shove down your throat to swab it? I hated that test. When she put the stick in my throat, I had a bad reflex and kicked my doctor in the shin. Hard. Most embarrassing thing to ever happen to me in front of her. Kind of a different situation, because I wasn't a patient, but I was finishing charting. Stood up and then tried to sit on the rolling chair. I must have slightly pushed it backward because I could only catch the slightest edge of the chair. Tried to catch my balance and sit farther back and the chair slid back farther. This went on for about 15 seconds until I fell on the ground. It was so prolonged and awkward, and of course in front of a group of physicians about to start rounds. Pulling my dong out to get checked for herpes but was really just a friction burn. Went to the family doctor to get a lump in my armpit checked out. The nurse told me to put on a gown, so I mindlessly stripped down naked and put on a gown. When the doctor came in he had a weird look on his face and said, you really didn't need to take your pants off. Why do they need to embarrass people, geez? When I was 16 my doctor, who was friends with my mom, mistook my very full bladder for pregnancy. You have been visited by the Good Sleep Pizza. You will be blessed with cozy sleeps, but only if you upvote before going to sleep. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.